On Christmas morning, 1859, in the low country of South Carolina, something happened that should not have been possible. 300 enslaved men, women, and children vanished from a plantation called Belmont Estate. There was no battle. No uprising recorded in official logs. No mass grave discovered. No bodies recovered. Just empty quarters. Unlocked chains. And a tunnel sealed from the inside. For over a century, historians, journalists, and investigators have tried to explain what happened that night. Some called it a tragedy. Others dismissed it as exaggeration. But fragments of testimony, contradictory reports, and one haunting phrase repeated by survivors refuse to disappear. If the first way fails, we take the deep way. What was the deep way? And where did 300 people go on Christmas Eve, 1859? This is the forgotten mystery of Belmont Estate. Belmont Estate sat along the Combahee River, surrounded by swamps that seemed endless. It was a rice plantation, one of the most profitable in the region, owned by Thomas Vance, a man known locally as strict, ambitious, and deeply invested in order. But by the late 1850s, Belmont had a problem. Productivity was declining. Resistance was increasing. People were running away. Vance believed fear alone was no longer enough. So in 1858, he hired a man who promised something new. Something scientific. Dr. Silas Croton. Croton claimed to be a physician and researcher trained in Europe and the North. He spoke confidently about psychology, conditioning, and behavioral control. He promised to break resistance without constant violence. Vance gave him free access to Belmont Estate. What Croton built there was known among the enslaved as the Correction House. It was not a hospital. It was not a prison. It was a place where people went and came back. Changed. Croton believed human beings could be reduced to components. That will could be broken. Memory reshaped. Identity erased. His notebooks, discovered decades later, described experiments in isolation, sensory deprivation, fear conditioning, and psychological fragmentation. People were taken alone. Locked in darkness. Exposed to loud noises, bright lights, unpredictable punishment. Some were returned within days. Others stayed weeks. Those who came back struggled to speak. Forgot names. Forgot family. Forgot themselves. But something else happened that Croton did not anticipate. The survivors began to recognize each other. Not by names, but by shared pain. People who had been through the correction house gravitated together. They whispered at night. They sang softly. They remembered for each other when memories failed. Croton thought isolation weakened them. Instead, it connected them. Belmont Estate sat atop an old drainage system built decades earlier to control flooding in the rice fields. The tunnels were narrow, damp, and largely forgotten by white overseers. But enslaved workers knew them. They cleaned them. Maintained them. And slowly, quietly, mapped them. By mid-1859, a plan had formed, not to run individually, but to leave together. 300 people. At once. On Christmas Eve. The date mattered. White overseers would be distracted. Guards would be fewer. The night would be loud with celebration. The plan was dangerous. Maybe impossible. But they had nothing left to lose. That night, singing was heard from below the ground. Not screams. Not chaos. Singing. Survivors later described it as calm, deliberate, a hymn without words. 17 people escaped before disaster struck. They emerged miles away, exhausted and terrified. Behind them, they heard a rumble, the sound of stone and earth collapsing. The tunnel had sealed. When authorities arrived at Belmont Estate on Christmas morning, they found Empty slave quarters. Chains unlocked and arranged carefully. No blood. No bodies. No sign of struggle. And the tunnel collapsed from the inside. 283 people were missing. Local authorities searched the tunnels for weeks. They found ash. Broken tools. Collapsed stone. But no remains. Fire alone could not explain it. Time could not explain it. Southern newspapers dismissed the story as abolitionist propaganda. They accused a Northern woman named Margaret Lindsay, who interviewed the survivors, of fabrication. But Lindsay persisted. She sent letters to abolitionist papers in Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. She testified before anti-slavery societies. Her reward? The 17 survivors were captured under the Fugitive Slave Act and returned to South Carolina in chains. They were sold separately. Scattered. Silenced. Yet the story refused to die. In early 1860, a rice merchant discovered a large, recently abandoned camp deep in the swamps south of Belmont, large enough for hundreds. In April, a ferryman on the Savannah River reported transporting 40 black travelers at night, organized, silent, and paying in gold. In North Carolina, a shopkeeper sold supplies to a woman whose speech sounded unfinished. As if she were relearning language. Across Virginia, Tennessee, and the Appalachians, rumors spread of sudden communities, hidden settlements, people who appeared and disappeared. No proof. Only fragments. Survivors spoke of something they called the Deep Way. Not a tunnel. Not a road. A place where the masters could not follow. Investigators assumed it was metaphor. But what if it wasn't geography at all? What if Croton's experiments, meant to isolate, had done the opposite? What if shared trauma forged a collective identity stronger than fear? The singing in the tunnel was not despair. It was unity. A declaration, we go together. In March 1861, weeks before the Civil War began, a package arrived at the offices of the Charleston Mercury. Inside. A chain from Belmont Estate. Unlocked. Carefully cleaned. With a note. We are not lost. We are free. And we remember. It was never traced. After that, the nation turned toward war. And Belmont Estate faded into silence. Croton himself vanished after Christmas Eve. His background was later revealed to be fabricated. His credentials false. In the 1920s, his notebooks were rediscovered. They revealed something chilling. Croton realized, too late, that his system had failed. His final entry ended mid-sentence. They are not what I believed. The conditioning did not. He had learned the truth. Human beings are not machines. Will cannot be fully broken. And people, even under unimaginable oppression, can organize, hope, and resist. In 1937, during the Federal Writers' Project, an elderly woman known as Aunt Bess recalled a story her grandmother told her. A plantation where everyone walked away. Not running. Walking. Together. They went somewhere the masters couldn't follow, she said. Because the masters didn't believe it existed. Freedom, she said, is not only a place. It's belief. We may never know exactly what happened in that tunnel on Christmas Eve, 1859. Maybe some died. Maybe some escaped. Maybe some vanished into communities history never recorded. But one truth remains. 300 people planned. 300 people resisted. 300 people walked away. Chains were left behind. And that act, regardless of outcome, was a victory. Because freedom is not only about where you go. Sometimes, it's about what you become. And maybe that is the deep way.